Oftentimes I've seen it argued that atheists are no better than religious fundamentalists because they believe just as dogmatically that no God exists. Agnosticism is frequently claimed to be the appropriate position for those who are quote-unquote neutral on the issue of God's existence. Some have even taken to stating that atheism is itself an illogical or unjustified stance, for various reasons. For this video, we will look at where the burden of proof lies, the difference between belief and knowledge, and other issues that will help to illuminate the fact that atheism is a justifiable position. First of all, what is atheism? Although a multitude of definitions exist, the best way to determine an accurate understanding of the word is to look at its origins and frame of reference. Atheism comes from the Greek word atheos. The prefix a means without, and theos means God. Thus, when put together, atheos is literally without gods. In modern English, atheism is very similar in meaning, except for one distinction. Atheism means without theism, just as asexual means a method of reproduction that is without sexuality, or atonal means a style of music that is without a central tone or key. Why does this distinction matter? Because atheism is often inaccurately portrayed as a belief in the non-existence of God. Theism is most certainly a belief. It is a belief in the existence of a god or gods. Therefore, what atheism truly means is to be without theism, or without that belief in any gods. To define atheism as a belief, religion, or anything of the sort is to misappropriate words. It would be the equivalent of saying that asexual reproduction is a method of fertilization that does not involve sexuality. How something asexual could fertilize by non-sexual means is just as much of a contradictory mystery as it is to suppose that atheists have a belief of disbelief in the existence of God. If we cut out fertilization, we can understand asexual reproduction as a method of reproducing by non-sexual means. And if we cut out belief, we can understand atheism as disbelief in the existence of God. Excess wording is most often proposed out of either confusion or an agenda to depict atheism in a certain biased way. Atheism is quite simply the absence of theism. This means that someone being an atheist tells us nothing about why they do not accept theism. They may be a non-theist because of personal experience, scientific evidence, or rational arguments they have found persuasive. This also means that assertions about atheism's responsibility for certain crimes against humanity are entirely baseless, as there is no logical progression whatsoever from the absence of theism to mass murder. Many times I am surprised to find that some people still do not seem to understand that atheism does not mean one claims to absolutely positively know that God doesn't exist. This is usually the presumption behind accusations about the arrogance and irrationality of atheism. Would agnosticism be a more reasonable position, given that we can't possibly survey all of reality in our lifetimes? Agnosticism is commonly mistaken for a middle ground of sorts between theism and atheism, and a closer look at the word will reveal the mistake. Atheism and theism are positions having to do with belief. One is the presence of belief, theism, and the other is the absence of that belief, which is atheism. Agnosticism, on the other hand, is a position that has to do with knowledge, not belief. Gnosticism comes from the Greek word gnosis, meaning knowledge. This title, Gnostic, was used to describe a particular kind of religious belief in the ancient world that considered knowledge of one's true divine self to be the real path to salvation. Thus, agnosticism, which should really be pronounced agnosticism, means to be without knowledge of the divine. Atheism and agnosticism deal with two different but related issues. Generally, I refer to myself as an agnostic atheist. I don't claim to know for certain that no God exists, yet I do not believe in any gods. A Gnostic atheist would be one who does claim to know that God does not exist. Conversely, an agnostic theist believes in God but doesn't know he exists for sure, and a Gnostic theist believes in God and does claim to know. There is some overlap between these, however. Although I am an agnostic atheist with regard to the existence of some general deity, I take a position of Gnostic atheism on some gods that are defined in such a way that their existence is logically impossible. Logically impossible gods can no more exist than square circles. What about the burden of proof? First, it must be realized that this expression does not mean one has to definitively prove something beyond any shred of doubt. To have a burden of proof merely means one is obligated to support their claims. Some theists vibrantly object to being given the burden of proof, but the truth is that atheists do have a burden of proof too. Whenever one makes a claim, they should offer reasons of support for it. Theists should do this when they claim that God exists, and atheists should do this when they claim that the theist's argument is faulty. Thus the burden of proof shifts during a debate, though it does initiate with the theists because they are the first to make a belief claim. How is atheism justifiable? Atheism is justified by demonstrating that theism lacks compelling evidence or arguments. This is how disbelief in any claim is justified. Why does this justify disbelief? Our brains are wired so that we believe what we consider true and we don't believe what we consider false. Belief and disbelief are psychological states, and there is no in-between. We can't half believe in something, but we can believe half of it and disbelieve the other half. Expressions such as "I'm not sure I believe" or "I don't think I believe" are indicative of reservations in our knowledge, not of some hypothetical halfway point between belief and disbelief. If we have no reason for considering a claim to be true, we will reject it. Because this is the default position, atheism is justified by demonstrating that theism lacks compelling reasons for belief. Sometimes it is suggested that atheism is not justifiable because we have not pried into every corner of the universe, or because a supernatural God is beyond any means of natural investigation. Yet this does not make atheism unjustified, rather this makes such a belief about God unjustified. As with Carl Sagan's example of the invisible, incorporeal floating dragon in his garage that breathes heatless fire, we need not take these unprovable ideas seriously. If a claim is not supported, or is beyond any possibility of support, then it is unjustified by default. The theist who adopts this tactic of proposing a God totally inaccessible to the natural world has neglected her burden of proof, therefore conceding the debate to the atheist. It is worth noting that being justified in belief or disbelief does not necessarily mean the position one holds is true. Based on the information available to them at the time, the ancients were justified in believing that the sun orbits the earth, despite what we now know to be true. As I've said in the past, the time to believe is when the evidence supports that belief, and not a moment before. If we want our beliefs to reflect reality, it is best to keep them consistent with the evidence, and when new information comes to light, they will adapt accordingly. To be justified only means that one has consistent reasoning in support of their view. While this won't prove a position true, it does serve as a way of assessing the rationality of a claim, which can help us get closer to the truth.